And we have a fantastic gentleman with us, Michael DeSelm. How are you, Michael?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen.
Hey, this is truly our honor to have you here. As you can tell if you're watching this, you can see a flag folded up in the upper left-hand side of Michael's camera right there, and it's an American flag. And what really touched me about your story, honestly, is first of all, you're a veteran, but furthermore, there's some other trials that you went through, and so it's going to be a fun story. I saw your story because my buddy reposted it, and he never reposts anything, and so I knew I had to reach out to you.
Well, stories are meant to be shared. It's the communal experience of the human journey. It's why kitchens are the #1 selling point of any house, because this is where we gather, especially stateside. If you're somebody over here in the Western Hemisphere, kitchens are all the rage, right? Why? Because this is where we like to gather around the table and swap stories. Maybe my Bedouin friends would rather do it over a campfire. I would certainly rather be under the stars. But hey, thank you, Zoom technology, for bringing us together today to share some stories and some times of encouragement.
That is fantastic. You know what? I never even knew that about the kitchen. You said that, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's what my wife said when she came and saw this house. Well, thank you for that education. I will definitely know how the realtors are reeling me in, doggone it.
The more you know, right?
Well, the awesome thing too, well, there's so many awesome things about you, but I want to delve into this. You are also a veteran of the Navy.
I am.
And proud of that. And I, again, thank you for your service. What was it that the Navy really got into teaching you? I mean, that's a dorky question, but it really, whenever I talk to my military friends, it's amazing the character that it helped them to build. I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind going into how that built your character and who you are today.
Yeah, sure. So hey everybody, my name is Michael DeSelm. So glad you guys are with us today. So I graduated high school at the tender age of 16 and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I really was hoping to get a degree in philosophy so I could be a qualified beach bum, because when you grow up in San Diego, surf, Mexican food, and hanging on the beach is all you ever want to do with your life. I think as we journey towards adulthood, we all realize that's probably not the best way to spend the days that you get to walk this planet. So a good friend of mine had sat down with me and said, hey, you need to, a mentor. He just looked at me and said, you are a smart guy. You've got a lot of potential to do a lot of different things. You're undisciplined, you're unfocused, and you need some structure. So what do you want to do? And I'm like, I just don't know. I have a long family tradition. I can date it back all the way to the Civil War of service members in my family. Somebody from every generation, all the way back to the Civil War, served. Whether it was via a draft or because of, a world war or a major conflict. It's just something that's kind of part of our family DNA. My mom and dad were both in the Coast Guard. My stepfather was in the Navy. And growing up in San Diego, it's a very, very, very Navy town.
Yes.
So, I always loved the look of a uniform. I always loved the pomp and the circumstance and just the kind of the rigidness that military life provided. But at 16, I was also very anti-authoritarian and anti-conforming. I had very long hair. And so yeah, we kind of sat down. We said, what do we want to do with our life? What, maybe just a 5-year plan. What do you want to do? Right. And so we looked at all the branches. Unfortunately, the Air Force wasn't hiring the day I went looking for a job. I knew that I didn't want to be a Marine. No offense to my Marine friends.
Yep.
And the Army wasn't something that interested me. Growing up on the ocean, and
Mhm.
salt water kind of in my veins, I still look for gills on the side of my neck. They're nice. The Navy just seemed like such a romantic place to be. You know, what could be more wonderful than an open ocean, a vast sea, nothing around, the moon bigger than life,
Right.
and the stars poking pinholes. I think Incubus said it best in Wish You Were Here, that it was, the ocean looks like diamonds strewn across a blue plate. And that's just, there's something very romantic about that to me. So, you know, off to the Navy I went on Groundhog's Day in 1995. It was probably one of the best decisions that I made, especially at that time in my life. It provided me structure and purpose and direction and guidance, and opportunity to hone craft, to travel. I met my wife at our first duty station. I joined the Navy and I went right back to San Diego, because why would you ever leave God's country? I mean, it's 75 and sunny year round, not to mention friends and Mexican food. Like, this is my people. This is my place. And, you know, we met in 1997, got married a few years later. We've got 3 amazing kids. We've done 3 different duty stations. We've done San Diego. We've done Bremerton, Washington. We did a short stint in Panama City for dive school. And then I spent 7 years in Virginia Beach at Little Creek.
Wow. Holy moly. And I never asked you what you did for the Navy. I thought it might be classified, but
No, I was a corpsman or a medic, depending on what branch of service you came from.
okay.
I had a chance to do a lot of really neat different jobs, from working on a cancer floor to putting in central lines, to being an operating room tech for 3 years. And then again, I wanted to be out of the hospital. I was in the physical prime of my life. I wanted to go outside and do cool things. And not to mention, this crazy thing happened in September 2001. You guys might remember it. The countries that we were pursuing were all landlocked. And I'm like, I want to go to dive school, because there's no lakes and oceans in Afghanistan. And so I went to dive school in 2001 and ended up, or 2002, and ended up getting stationed at a SEAL team as a hard hat dive med tech. For some of the finest men and women that I had the honor to serve with. And I was there for 7 years. Great work, great people. The teams are a very, very special, unique environment. It's interesting. Like, I grew up in Coronado, so I watched a lot of my neighbors were SEALs or team guys. I would watch new classes go through buds on a regular basis, and I'd always thought to myself, I'm like, that's crazy. That stuff is ludicrous. I never want to do that. And so instead I went to dive school, because, you know, there's a 70% failure rate there instead of like 80% at buds. Don't quote me on that. The fact checkers, please don't show up and tank the podcast. But you know, just the opportunity to serve in a volunteer context, right? Yeah, especially, so number one, in America, we have a all volunteer force, right? And that makes what we do special.
Yeah.
It makes a professional force. And then when you get to some of the other special jobs, whether, you know, in the Navy, it's SEALs and diving and EOD and SWCC, surface warfare close combatant. Those guys are all special pipelines that have to go through various screening processes to make the cut. And so you're working with a smaller group of people, and that group of people love what they get to do and they want to do it. And so you're really, you know, no disrespect to anybody else, but you're really working with the cream of the crop, the best of the best, people that love what they get to do and who they get to do it with. And so it was a wonderful 7 years. My time in service, I will always look back on fondly. And I think I've actually been out of the service almost as long as I was in the service at this point.
Oh, wow. 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 Man, I don't know about you, Gary, but when you said that you were assigned to a SEAL team, I got goosebumps. and this is the reason why. You see the things on Hollywood and such, like there's a different type of demeanor that when you actually know folks from those teams, it's a quiet confidence. It's not this false bravado. And every special forces, whether it be SEALs or other, uh, have the deepest respect for each other that I can't even explain it. And there's this reverence that comes about. Now, I know a lot of listeners already go, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Well, wait till you have the opportunity to speak of one who was truly served and put it all out on the line." And I can't even imagine the things that you've seen in your service, because you're there with a band of brothers that it's so deep in that bond, man. Very few people get to experience that kind of bond.
Well, I think too is.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I think you're also a prime example, Michael, of kind of what Maurice is talking about. So even on the Hollywood side of things, there's a definitely you know, when you think of like a Navy SEAL or whatever, there's that Hollywood version.
Yeah.
But I see you, and I see the people that I know that have been, you know, Navy SEAL, that type of thing. I use the word polished.
Yes.
And I think that you epitomize what I see in people that I know that have been in those elite groups. Right. And even down to, like, I know someone that does welding, you know, for the Navy, which is another group of very elite people. And there's just this common thing, and I'll just say it's just polished. Yes. You know what I mean? And so it's unfortunate sometimes that doesn't get portrayed more, you know, in the whole grand scheme of things.
I don't know that it sells quite as well in Hollywood.
Yeah, probably not.
I do want to make sure that I just take a few moments to clarify. Number one, I was not a SEAL. I had the honor to serve with SEALs. I was a dive med tech. I was a diver, which is another small community of misfit children, I think, is probably the best way, miscreants and misfit children, to describe us. And while I did have opportunities to do various different deployments, I never did operational missions with my team. That was not something that I was called to do, asked to do, invited to do. There are other opportunities for other folks that do those things, and that was not the avenue that I was pursuing or was invited to participate in. And so I want to make sure I take, because I know the community very much protects its own, and is also very protective of the brand and the ethos. And that's part of, you know, some of that mystique is part of what makes it special. But, you know, again, some of the finest men and women I got a chance to serve with that just have done good work. And
I think that's important. And I know what you're saying. I know where you're going is, but I think it's also important for people to realize, you know, so you got the Navy SEALs, but there are all these other groups that as you go up in the ranks, that are incredibly elite units. You know what I mean? And that's whether you're, you know, like you said, in combat or whatever else, just to get through some of these programs. I know that, you know, like the Navy SEALs get a lot of the highlight, but there's so many other areas of just elite people, you know, and elite groups that are incredibly hard to get into and succeed.
I couldn't agree more, Gary. I mean, you talk about your buddy that's the welder, underwater welder, and I've heard some crazy stories about dive school as well, man. That's some heavy duty stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm claustrophobic in water. You put me in the water, I'm freaking already.
Well, and I'll say too, just, you know, you said you were a medic, right?
Yes.
That's some of the stuff you did as well. And that's, you know, you're tossing in central lines. You're doing stuff that is incredibly takes a lot of skill. And under a lot of pressure. You know, like I work in healthcare, and when we're doing stuff like that, we're in a nice little, you know, nice little room with all of our resources and everything. And so, I mean, I look at medics, and I just want to tell you across the board, I have such respect for medics. especially in the military. I mean, it's what you guys do on a daily basis is amazing.
And it's a real humdinger that those skills that we learn don't have transferable certifications. The things that my scope of practice as a non-independent duty corpsman, I never went to that extra school for a year to operate independently outside of the purview of medical supervision. But I would say that you're expected to be that level of competent in the role that I was performing. But the scope of practice is so broad, whether it's, I had full med kits, whether I was deploying wherever, for antibiotics, for minor surgical type things. I mean, all of it, it's just, it's crazy what we were allowed to do under the purview of somebody else's license, sometimes not even in the same country, let alone the same hemisphere. And then when you leave the service, unless you pursued a nursing degree or a paramedic license, this is actually where the PA program came about. After Vietnam, Navy corpsmen would come back from theater with all this experience, but no certification for a transferable skill. And so, sometimes I miss, putting in a line or just being able to have my medical bag in the back of the car, but it's okay. We'll take it as it is.
Well, I'm going to pivot here, right?
Yeah, I was. And actually, my pivot point, Maurice, was actually the one thing that I think circles all of those experiences together, both personally and professionally, not just for me, but for others in those communities, is the word grit.
Yes.
There is an intangible amount of grit that you see in these folks that pursue these types of roles. And it was that grit for me. And we all have our origin story with its highlights and lowlights. That origin story for me of grit actually is kind of what led to the post that you read about my story. So
that it's intense.
Not to steal your thunder, please go ahead.
It's so intense. Because here you are, you served so extremely well. I mean, it's obvious. And then you think, well, you know what? The guy gives his all like that. It's all good. You give him a break. And then all of a sudden you get diagnosed with stage IV Non-Hodgkins lymphoma. Stage IV, man. I've shared this in stories in the past, but my father died of cancer. And so when you hear stage IV, man, that's not anything that's good. And just to see, you go back to the word grit, my goodness, looking at what you took from that experience, it wasn't anything that was catastrophic and gloom and doom. You hit it head on. And that's what was so inspiring about that. And I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what grit helped you overcome, but also what are the things that you learned in the process, even when, again, this sounds so cliche, but even when the times were so daggum dark, right? So just, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah. Heavy. All right. So if you're watching, if you're listening, this is your coffee break. Go reload your coffee or your water, right? So I left the Navy in 2009. I moved to a place that I'd never lived before to pursue a life in ministry, which was the next season that I felt was important for my life. 3 years into that plant, my mentor was diagnosed with his own end-stage lung cancer. And 18 months later, he passed away. And as I walked out of that hospital room with my mentor's family and friends, received a phone call from my stepfather letting me know that my mother had literally just passed away as well. So,
oh my goodness,
I did the first 2 funerals in my story in my life as a pastor in the first week for 2 of the most influential people of my life. Right. And it was you do what the military teaches you to do. You put it in a box. You say, all right, I have a mission. I need to complete the mission. I have tasks at hand. And, and I pursued forward, but I neglected my mental health in the process, and I neglected my spiritual health in the process. And so I took some time after all of that to leave ministry altogether and started working in the nonprofit sector. And I love what I get to do now. And so I share all that because that part of the grit story informs the next part of the grit story, right? So fast forward to March 2021, right? So this was supposed to be our 20th wedding anniversary. My wife and I, we got married on St. Patrick's Day of 2021, or 2001, sorry. And so we escaped down to Miami Beach, to South Beach, to this great little hotel that we love. And one of the things you learn in the military, especially in the special operations and special warfare communities, whether you like it or not, you learn to love running. And you learn to love exercise. It becomes part of your personal ethos, right? Because you need to be able to function in all sorts of austere environments. And so I'd gotten up that morning for a beautiful South Beach run, and it was gorgeous. I salt the air, and I went out for a run, and I'm just like, man, I just don't feel right. You ever get that moment where you just don't feel right? Something's up, but you don't know why. And so so I was like, that's kind of weird. And so I go through some chiropractic treatment for all of March, April, and then May comes around. And my son, I have 3 children. My oldest daughter's 24. My youngest daughter's actually just turned 20 on Saturday. And my son is 16. And he's a competitive wrestler in high school. And so he had a big tournament in the middle of May. And we were getting ready to leave to go for this tournament. And I just doubled over in the most excruciating pain I'd ever experienced in my life. And it was all in my low back. And all this time I thought like I'd blown a disc, I was lifting too heavy, or I just wasn't taking care of my body. Because let's face it, gentlemen, if you're listening, if you're watching, we are not the best at taking care of ourselves. If you have any medical experience, add an extra layer to that, because we're the worst patients. We self-diagnose, we self-treat, and we don't let anybody else take care of us because we figure we've got it figured out, right?
So true.
And so I call my wife. I'm like, babe, I'm in tears. I'm crying. I'm just like, worst experience of my life. And I'm like, I need you to bring home some crutches because I can't miss this boys tournament. I told him I would be there. So if nothing else, I can crutch my broke ass through the tournament. Sorry. Filter that one out if you need to. But I'm like, I'm not missing this thing. Part of the reason I left the military early before retirement is so I could be around to watch my kids grow up. This is not an experience that I got from my father or my stepfather. And I didn't want to miss those formative years. So I left a retirement on the table because family is more important to me than a paycheck. And so I finally stopped going to the chiropractor. I finally go to the doctor, right? And the doctor says, well, I don't treat this. Let me send you to the next guy. The next guy finally says, let's run an MRI. And so we do an MRI, and lo and behold, I'm sitting on a beach, and the doctor calls me and he says, you need to come back. We need to admit you. We need to do all these tests. I'm like, doc, don't blow smoke. I speak your language. Tell me what's going on. And I'm reading the lab report, heterogeneous abnormal bone marrow. And I'm like, what? And it's in my pelvis. It's in my lymph nodes in the right side of my hip. It's in my hip. It's in L1. It's in L3. That's your lumbar spine for you non-medical types. It's in my ribs. And I'm like, what the heck? And it's crazy, right? So we have to go through 2 biopsies to finally get enough material to find out what kind of cancer it is. And so it was diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And if you're going to roll the dice, if you're going to roll the cancer roulette wheel, this is your best outcome, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you. Not because it's treatable, but because it's curable, especially if you catch it. The problem is, for me, it had spread so far, and because there was bone marrow involvement, it was classified as stage 4, as the worst of the worst. Now, the blessing is it never made it inside my internal organs and never made it past the diaphragm boundary. It was confined to these kind of long bone marrow spaces and its localized area in the hip. But I couldn't walk. I've got two dogs, two American bulldogs. They're huge and they require at least 2 miles of walking a day. And I couldn't do it. And for someone who has always been self-reliant and driven, and there were times, especially in my younger years, when my wife would yell at me. She's like, "You're being an ass. You need to go for a run. Get out. Don't come back until you get the energy out of your system, because you're being a Richard right now. Okay, you're not allowed to be in my house and be a Richard. Get out." Right? And I couldn't even do that. I couldn't participate in my son's wrestling practices. I couldn't do the things that I love to do, and I couldn't walk the dog. And so here's a bit of serendipity, if you will, gentlemen. 1 year ago today, I got my first treatment.
Wow.
1 year ago today, on August 16th of 2021, I received my first of 6 infusion treatments on a 21-day basis. And so you asked, Maurice, what did I learn from that? So number one, selfish, ambitious plug. I have a blog called, it's at padremikeyd.com, where I wrote about the story, so the journey to some degree, right? And I would say, so, between my life grit experiences and faith, which was an important part of my story, it shaped my outlook. So number one, I think we all have this idea of how long the dash is, right? So you got your start point and you got your end point. We all have this idea how long the dash is. And when I looked at my odds for a stage 4 non-Hodgkins lymphoma, you're talking 6 and 10 for 5 years. And because of my type and my stage, it likes to come back in the spine. And so if the first 8 months, the first year is really kind of the make or break. If I make it past year 1, then my odds, my long-term survival odds are huge, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of people who have lived 20, 30, 40 years,
right,
never had the cancer come back. They caught it when they were young or what have you, right? But there's this thing, right? So you think your dash is this, when you're like, I've been through some stuff in my life, and I know that my dash could be shorter, but I didn't think it was this.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things that my mentor, Richie, who had his own cancer, one of the things that I learned from him, and it definitely informed my journey, was to be fully present in every moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, whether you're driving a car, you live in a city, you live in a rural town, wherever you're at, you just don't know. Tires fly off of semis all the time. Squirrels run out into traffic all the time. And according to the pharmaceutical industry, you can't schedule a heart attack. So, Friday at 8 a.m. is not a good time. Can we schedule it for 2? Excellent. Great. Let's You can't do that with cancer either, right? And so number one, my dash, I realized it may not be as long as it is. So number one was really try to be fully present in every moment. And number two, Jocko Willink, I'm a big fan of Echelon Front and what they do there. I've read both of his books, he talks about the first win of the day is getting up when your alarm goes off. And then if you go to, don't quote me on this, I want to say Admiral McCraven, he gave a commencement speech at UT, Navy Special Warfare Admiral. And
awesome.
He talked about
that was a great talk.
The second win of the day was making your bed. For him, it was the first win of the day was making your bed. And Jocko would say actually getting up is the first win. Number 2 is making your bed, right? So you can say you accomplish something every day, right? Yeah. So that's because the chemo cycle was a 21-day cycle, I shortened everything up in my perspective to these 21-day increments. And then I shorten it up to a daily increment. Like number one, get up. All right. So maybe I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm generally at the gym at 4:30, 4:45, and I'm at the gym until about 6:30 or 7 o'clock. All right. So I'm physically not able to do these things because I'm going through these weird treatments. I'm still going to get up. I'm still going to get up at the same time because I still have a call. I have 3 really, really dear friends that I meet with on Zoom 4 days a week. And we meet at 5 o'clock every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. I can count on it like clockwork. And that helped keep me grounded, right? These guys are going to ask me the tough questions. They're going to give me the encouragement. They're just going to love on me the best way that men do. Because honestly, dudes, this is not something we do well. We don't do community well. We don't do relationship well. We don't let people in, let alone share what's going out, right? So get up, keep the regular schedule, and I'm not advocating for 4 a.m. If you are not an early morning person, my wife is not an early morning person. Like I go to give her a kiss at 4:05 when I'm getting out of the bed, and she's giving me a lot of colorful language telling me to go away. Like, no, this is not the time for you to talk to me, to kiss me, to tell me you love me. Get out. And I would tell her the same thing at 10 o'clock at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, and she's like, let's have a conversation. But you learn those things over 25 years. And so you get up, you keep a regular routine, and then here's the most important thing. The only thing that any one of us can control, the only thing that any of us can control is our heart attitude to the world around us. And I'm an extrovert. I need community. I need to be around people. I need interaction. And if I'm a grumpy butt and I'm being a jackwagon and I'm just unpleasant to be around, the things that I crave and need the most, I'm sabotaging from me. I need relational intimacy. I need experiential communication.
Yeah.
And if I'm a jackass, nobody wants to hang around you, right? And so I could wake up every morning and make the decision: is today going to be a day where I'm just going to wallow in the muck and say today sucks and oh woe is me, or am I going to pick myself up and say, all right, I'm going to figure it out. It may not be my best day, it may not be my most glorious moment, but it's still better than the option of staying in bed. Now, I've, with the cancer diagnosis, if you've walked through this or been with somebody who's walked through this, you know how depressing it is. Any life threatening illness is incredibly depressing, whether it's a mental health illness or a physical health illness, right? And so, getting out of bed really is the hardest thing. I've dealt with depression in my life. My family's dealt with depression in our life, and I know how hard getting out of bed is. It's tough. And so committing to a regular routine and having people who check in on me on a regular basis, relationships that I had been cultivating long before my diagnosis, and I will cultivate long after my diagnosis is done. And then choosing how I'm going to interact with the world around me. And I kept this slow cycle, and sure enough, I got COVID somewhere in the middle of all that because my immune system was garbage. But I did my time in the hospital and got better, and then got right back on the treatment train. I finished my 6 cycles of chemotherapy. I did 2 more inpatient stints to kind of prophylactically prevent it from coming back in my spinal column. And then, interestingly enough, on Groundhog's Day, which we've already talked about, was the day I was released from the hospital for the last time.
Wow.
And I had numerous PET scans throughout the process, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, my doctor said, "Hey, congratulations, you're in complete remission." And I'm like, "I still see stuff on the scan." He's like, "I'm a doctor." And I'm like, "Yeah, and I stayed at Holiday Inn Express last night. I still see stuff on the scan." And so, if you haven't noticed, sense of humor is the other part that keeps it going, right? You got to have some levity, ladies and gentlemen. Right. Life is too short. It is
Yeah.
too short. I mean, if you don't think that God or the creator has a sense of humor, look at the duckbill platypus. It sweats milk, for crying out loud, okay? Anyway, so complete remission happened at some point during the journey. And I've been on this kind of process since. I see the doctor every 3 months for the first year. And then, I don't know, I think the second year is every 6 months. I haven't gotten that far yet. I don't want to look that far ahead. I'm too busy trying to stay focused on today.
That's fantastic, man.
Because today is what we have.
Yeah. But I love what you said too. I mean, you went over some of this. One of the things that I read on that post that really prompted me to reach out. It says, every moment is precious, every second is worth a lifetime. None of us know what tomorrow may bring, but today you have the choice to get up and get out of bed and grind it out, or wallow in the depths of your circumstances. It couldn't be truer. Really, really couldn't. I've been there on the latter end of that, man. I know Gary has, because one day we both woke up and I called him and go, today sucks, man. Let's go take a break. And it was so funny. But to your point, the humor, the grit, the relationships, it's amazing. I couldn't thank you enough. Well, with that though, you got yourself out of the wallow in the depths of your circumstance. You got yourself out of that depths of the circumstances, right? Now, what you're doing now with this, with Stop Soldier Suicide, is also gigantic, because if there's anyone that could relate, I mean, you were performing at a high level. You were assigned to teams that were performing at a high level. And I have seen it over and over and over again personally, in friends, and just their friends as well. That PTSD and so on and so forth is something that I don't think, well, I know most people don't quite understand what the true depths of the PTSD does. What is it that you on your side, it says veterans are at 50% higher risk of suicide than their peers who haven't served.
Yep.
And you folks are here to change that. How do you change that?
One life, one conversation, one relationship at a time. So Stop Soldier Suicide, we have a very ambitious goal of reducing veteran and service member suicide to the norm, to the national average by 2030. That's a 40% reduction. And we've got less than 8 years to make that happen, but it can happen. And so it happens through a couple different ways. On the front end, our organization provides wellness center coaching and services free of charge, 100% confidential, to active duty service members and veterans. And it's free of charge because when you're in the depths, when you're wallowing in the depths of your circumstances, one of the last things you're thinking about is, even if I could find help, I can't afford help.
Yes.
And in the military, my oldest daughter, she's active duty.
Oh wow. Okay.
She has talked about, and she's a corpsman, she's a medic like her mom and I were. She's talked about there being a 6 to 8 week wait just for access to mental health care services.
Yes.
And it's not because they're not available. It's that because we can't retain the talent, it's the same way in the VA. We can't retain the talent. We can't access the talent, or the talent is backlogged, right? So that's why we provide it free, because it's too important. Your life is way more important than any cost.
Yeah.
And so our wellness center folks, clinically, we have scientific advisory board that provides coaching on our model. We have social workers, crisis counselors, psychologists on staff that are making sure that we follow proper best practices and protocols. We have never lost a veteran to suicide in our 10 years of existence. Last year, we saved over 147 lives through our sessions.
Okay,
That's awesome.
The reason I'm looking down all the time, I'm taking notes.
That's incredible.
That is amazing.
Our team, their heart is, you can't put a cap on it. It's so big. Their compassion, their depth and drive to serve and care. is just really unparalleled in most anything I've ever seen. And I've been around, I've been in the healthcare service, I've been in the ministry for a number of years on top of that. I know what compassion fatigue looks like, and I'm blown away how my team doesn't have it. And one of the reasons why I think our team doesn't have it is our organization does a great job to take care of us. We get a wellness day almost every month. There's always a 3-day weekend in every month. As part of us pursuing our own wellness, we have a whole Slack channel dedicated to hiking, camping, fishing, sleeping, book reading, music playing, whatever fills your cup. We have a whole channel dedicated to that on wellness, because it's that important to us. You can't care for others without making sure you care for self.
Oh my goodness.
And so the front end of our organization provides these services. They also provide life coaching, and whether you're a high risk all the way down to the low risk client. On the other side of the organization where I work, we are the engine. We are the nuclear power plant. We are, I probably shouldn't say coal power plant. That's probably a dirty word these days. We are the wind solar turbine of suicide prevention. So my role as a corporate donor relations specialist is really, my job is to link arms with businesses, to talk about what we do, why we do it, and to invite you to participate in the story. You know, our nation's veterans, when we sign that contract, and your father did this as well, Maurice, when you sign that contract, you're signing a contract till death do us part, whether you like it or not, and you're asking for nothing in return. You're saying, I'm going to give you my last full measure to believe in this ideal and see it come to fruition, because I believe in it so much. And I think there are individuals and businesses and corporations in this world that understand that have a philanthropic heart, that understand what corporate social responsibility is and why it's important. And they understand that when people come to work, they bring their whole selves to work, whether they're a veteran or a family member of a veteran or just a friend of a friend of a friend. And so caring for people, and I mean, we've learned this through the whole COVID thing, right? You know, self-care is a very important thing, right? And so my job is to it's to reach out to the organizations that say, hey, you love veterans, I love veterans. You have a pool of money that you are going to write off as a tax expense. I know you're going to do it. I want to be your number one choice. And here's the data and the proof to show the work that you are funding. We are a data-driven organization because while numbers tell the story, it's my job as the communicator to share the story.
That's fantastic. A reason I say fantastic is my wife is in urgent care, and she said that there are so many people that need mental health, they can't find a provider because the health providers are also burnt out. And just knowing that you're taking care of your mental health providers is quite a big deal. It's actually a model that some other organizations can take care of, instead of just this pure profit center or whatever it might be. It really is about the individual and the individuals providing that service that makes it so impactful. And when you said that everyone, I mean, 147 lives you've saved without mental health practitioner burnout, that's just ginormous, man. I can't thank you for that example enough, simply because I've seen where it's not working personally over here.
Well, and I want to take it to another level, Mo, so I worked at a level 1 psych facility for 4 years as part of an overall emergency department. And the thing that I saw whenever I interacted with veterans, especially, is they come from an organization where it's all about the team, and it's all about what can I do for my team. It's always an outward approach. And then they get out of the service and they don't even know how to take care of themselves. They don't even know how to turn that and say, first of all, they lose so much of that camaraderie that was such a vital part of who they were. And like you said, it's until death do you part. And so when you get out and all of a sudden that's not there on a daily basis, they're at risk. I mean, they're at full risk of having mental health issues. And that's aside from all the stuff that some of these veterans have seen in, in combat or whatever else it might be. And so I just want people to think a little bit about, you throw that number out, 147, that's incredible. But I'll tell you, when you're sitting down, when someone's in that triage chair and they're telling you, I need help.
Yeah.
And so many times, as we know, with mental health, in healthcare, it's just a revolving door where you come in and you go out, and you come in and you go out, and you come in and you go out. And so that's why it's so exciting to see organizations like what you're doing, that really are what's going to make a difference. Truly. It's not going to be, there is that need to pull people. Well, let me throw an analogy out real quick. So this is how I try to explain it to people is, imagine a bridge that's broken, right? And it's the middle of the night, and all these people are walking, and they're going to fall into the bridge, and then they're going to go down the river. And so you have two points of reaching these people. You can try and pull them out of the water before they drown. And that's what emergency services and people like us do, is we're trying to keep, they're already in the water and they're already drowning. Right. But then you got to step back and try and keep these people from, you got to dedicate the resources to keep them from falling in the first place.
Yeah. Right. Whether it's providing a net or fixing the bridge.
Exactly. And our healthcare system right now, many times we're pulling them out of the water and throwing them right back on the path. And it just goes around and around.
I don't like that picture, Gary.
That's why it's so exciting to see what you're doing, where you're getting people off that path and sending them down a safe pathway, a sustainable pathway, a pathway that they don't even have to go over that bridge anymore. And it's huge. And again, I want to emphasize, it's about the one. It's not about the 147. It's not about whatever. It's about the one.
Yeah.
So kudos to what you guys are doing. It really kind of hits close to home to me too.
Yeah, big time.
I think what makes that possible is that our wellness center staff, they are doing one-on-one coaching, and they, as much as the individual is responsible for their care, we're the ones reaching out as well. We're doing the follow-ups, whether it's once or twice a week. We're making those consistent touch points. So like for me, and especially during my cancer journey, knowing that I had 3 guys waiting for me on a Zoom call at 5 o'clock in the morning, whether I liked it or not, they were pursuing me, or I was pursuing them. There was that consistency, that safety net to make sure that, like, hey, maybe the bridge is broken, but we're not going to let you fall. And what I love our wellness center doing is they reach out to we're looking for that kid that's in the basement of mom and dad's house, or mom and mom's house, or dad and dad's house at 3 a.m. in the morning. That's 2/5 into their weekend. They've been gaming since, Friday night. It's 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, and the demons of midnight strike. And we all have those things that hit us, right? And we are strategically positioning ourselves with ads on Twitch, on Discord, on streaming sites. We are out looking for the one that has left the sheep pen in the most dire circumstances, and then we are pursuing them, and we're providing care for them.
And that's the key, because you touched on that before, is when people are in the throes of depression or whatever it is, they can't reach out. Many times they do not have the capability, even if they wanted to get help. And so your active pursuit model, to me, is so exciting. Like,
this is the hardest thing in the world when you're in crisis to pick up.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. The heaviest weight too, no doubt, right? Man, this is a deep conversation. But it's much needed too. Because whereas so many, we are having a jovial time right now, but every one of us have definitely either been in that pickle, or definitely have known people that have been in that pickle, and or currently are in that pickle. And just knowing that there's organizations like yours, and more importantly, the level of caring, they're not a project. They are truly an individual that matters. And so oftentimes you don't get that vibe, and just hearing your passion and hearing your deep concern, and empathy. I mean, you've been through so much too. Knowing that there's that many people doing that thing, it fills me with a lot of hope. I know it's not a religious podcast or what have you, but that hope's a big, gigantic thing, and it is a very tangible thing for people in dire circumstances. And kudos doesn't even begin to feel the immensity of what you do. But I do say kudos to you.
Thank you.
And I always ask this, and when there's people like you that are in the boots on the ground type of people when it comes to mental health, from your experience and from what you guys have seen and what you're doing, if someone has someone that they know is struggling, what is the one thing that you would recommend?
If you know you have someone who's struggling, be present. Stop doing what you're doing. Nothing else is more important. Go be present. I don't know if you guys are fans of UFC.
Oh yeah.
But Batty McPatty, on at the end of his last fight, he made this very impassioned plea. I posted it on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
He said that, a couple hours before his fight, one of his best friends had reached out to him and was thinking about committing suicide or choosing to end his life. And Batty said, look, I would rather you weep on my shoulder than weep at your funeral. He said, if you need help, go be a friend, go stand next to someone. I'm married. I've been married for 21 years. I continue to pursue my wife on a daily basis because I don't know how long that dash is, right? And so I want to make sure that I intentionally pursue that relationship. It's that important to me. If you have a friend or if you know someone who is in duress, pursue them. Be the friend that you want someone to be for you and pursue them. You make the choice on your circumstances. If they're in duress, though, they're not, that maybe their ability to make that choice is compromised. But your presence, sometimes you don't even have to say anything, just be there.
Yep.
I mean,
I want to emphasize that, like, so many people are worried about, because again, I have experience on both sides of that fence, personally. And, so many people are worried about, well, what if I don't say the right thing? What if I don't do the right thing? What if I make it worse? And to echo what you're saying, I think this is so important, is just physically be there. You don't even have to say anything. Just show up. Just sit there. If that's all you can do is just sit there.
Yeah.
And that'll make such a huge difference.
Yeah, it will.
It'll save a life.
It will save a life.
Totally. There's no doubt about it. You brought up the UFC fighter, and you talk about a moment of vulnerability.
Yeah.
That he let everyone see that it was, when you see a tough dude like that talk about those types of things. You talk about UFC. I do like UFC. One of our first interviews was John Hackelman. He's Chuck Liddell's coach, and he talked about that growing up bullied in Hawaii, and same daggum thing. It was the people that were there for him, and man, it goes over and over and over. So despite all the toughness that we see and in the military too, everyone has to remember at the end of the day, we're still individuals. And man, it might be out of context, but it sounds, all this might sound deep and philosophical, but it's all about that connection, and you do it so well. You do it so well. Yeah. I'm just glad that my buddy reposted your article, man.
I wasn't expecting anything. It was so my friends who know me, like they that's me on a daily basis. Like, I'm just going to grind it out today. If today is Suckfest 98, then it's Suckfest 98. Maybe tomorrow will be better, but either way, I'm just going to try to grind it out. And, I've been with Stop Soldier Suicide for almost a little, I guess 6 weeks now. And I didn't want to post it on the company Slack. It's not like hey, everybody, I'm new to the team.
Yeah.
I had cancer. Check out my story. Right. No, I didn't think that was the right thing, but I don't do social media because I found it to be an unsafe and a caustic environment. I'm on Instagram because I can find things to laugh at there. And I still have a lot of friends from grad school and from the Navy that are on LinkedIn. And so it's a great way for me to just kind of, post a little something. And so I started a ruck march every Saturday morning. I've got an Army friend of mine. He's a major. He's up at Fort Drum. And he said, hey, we need to tackle Mount Marcy in upstate New York. And we're going to do it on Columbus Day weekend. And so that's a 16-mile hike. It's an 8-hour there and back. I want to say 3,500 foot of elevation change. And he said, I know you have a lot of grit, Mike. I know you've done some cool stuff. And so I'm going to challenge you to the Ranger screener test of a 70 to 75 pound ruck over 4 miles in less than an hour to start training and prepping for our Mount Marcy hike. And so every Saturday morning, I'm up at 6 and I'm grinding it out at 7 a.m. up the hills, because nothing in Eastern Pennsylvania is flat. If you've been to this part of the world,
you're right.
I am about 30 minutes south of the Appalachian Trail. We call it Rocksylvania on purpose. There's nothing flat here. And I still haven't broken that hour mark yet, but I'm close. I'm really, really close. But
That's
every Saturday
impressive.
morning, I'm out there walking away, having a good time.
That you're carrying a ruck at that level of elevation, man. I couldn't run on flatness at 4 miles per hour with nothing on my back. So
it's because you're running with the rugby team all on you, and you're pushing the match, right?
Oh my goodness, well, Mike, this has been such a pleasure. Unreal. I am so grateful that we came across your article, and I am so thankful for everything that you do, and would hope that if there's anything that you would need from our platform, that you'd be not afraid to give us a buzz. It'd be our pleasure.
I am flattered.
And I want to just interject a little bit. First of all, it's such a pleasure to meet you. You're so fun to talk to. It's just been a blast. So you touched earlier, I just want to put a plug in real quick, how horrible we are as males in our healthcare. So just last week, I think I got my Q25-year checkup. So, and that's a rough estimate. It could be much worse than that. I don't even know. So,
he just disappeared.
That's what happens, men. If you're watching this, even if you get your Q25-year checkup, you don't disappear. You're still with us. Gary,
yes. Well, Mike, again, thank you so much, and stay on the line for a second after, okay?
Of course.